Welcome back everyone. So this is exciting as we get into the second tier on my Patreon, which is entitled the Artistic Wand. And for that level in my Patreon, I'm going to be painting this beautiful magic wand in watercolor. Now, if you've watched my live yesterday, you would have seen me start off this sketch by showing you how I use graphite on the back of my reference material that I've printed out on A4 size because I'm going to be painting it on A4 size, and I showed you guys how I stick it down and begin the drawing. So today, before we get started, let's get our flame of hope going. And there we have it. Wonderful. Alrighty then. I like to just light a flame of hope for all of the situations in our world. May there be light and love. And yes, I always believe that there is a way out if we start to work on ourselves, because that is where the solution lies. Now, yesterday I just did the outline of the magic wand on its own, and I've also started to just trace this circumference of this round stone table. I have no idea what it really is. It almost looks like a tree that was cut off, but at the same time it just looks like a round stone. So whatever it is, we are going to be painting it. So I just want to continue with my basic drawing here and just get that on the paper. I apologize, the doggies is excited about some movement in the garden, so we'll get them sorted. I mean, what is a wizard without his familiars, right? And then I'm just gonna sort of take note of some of these textural lines that indicates that this is a round sphere. Now, I did mention in the live yesterday that if you don't really particularly enjoy drawing, or you find it challenging but you would really like to get into a creative practice, then please use a reference material, print it out, and just simply copy the important information, almost like creating a little bit of a coloring book for yourself. And that way you just relieve all that stress and worry about trying to draw all of these details in your painting. And you can just go ahead and just get into the painting without stressing so much about all of the details, so that you can begin to enjoy the painting. It's almost like just giving yourself a little bit of a coloring book there. I'm just taking note of these rocks and formations here as well. Just the sort of rough layout. Where is it positioned? That's really what I'm concerned about. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about these flowers that is growing next to this stone. I also take note of any details that I might want to maybe use a masking fluid on. So I just want to sort of give myself an idea where these plants are. Here's some beautiful plants in the background. I'm not going to worry about that too much. I don't necessarily want to copy every single detail. I do, however, like the light, the magical moment of color here, and just the general placement of the main sort of, what shall we call it, elements of this wand. I do like some of this detail on here, so I might just add it in to give this wand some magical character. But again, I'm sort of making it my own. I'm not going to try and capture every single detail that is on here. I'm just going to create my own interpretation of these lines. And then I sort of know where I can play with that. There we go. I think that is beautiful. I think the important note here is just to notice where this stone is coming down to the ground on the sides, just to indicate the sort of thickness of the stone. And it's all dark down here anyway, so we have that sort of line to indicate that is basically where it is situated. I might just do this for myself, just to give myself an indication of some, undetailed line work down here. That's all in shadow. Right. So now that we've captured that, I thought today's lesson must go a little bit more about wet into wet flow techniques, because in my reference material there are a lot of color movements, and if you understand the magic of watercolor, you are able to replicate that or create that for yourself without much difficulty. So I'm going to leave this pad of mine on the table, and I'm going to bring my other art journal to the table, and I've got here just a round object, because what I want you to do is just to take some watercolor paper that you can practice on, and let's draw some circles to just practice in. So I'm just going to go ahead and make some circles on my paper, just to indicate some areas to practice in. And this is a fun exercise that you can try just to practice doing some wet into wet techniques that you're going to use in this painting. And we're going to try playing with the color combinations as well. And I'm giving myself a few circles so that, it's going to happen fast, in the sense of once you drop in your paint, you might want to move on to another circle to try another color combination. Oh, doesn't matter if they touch. It's just a practice page. We're going to have fun with it. There we go. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? Alrighty then. So let us get our watercolor out. I'm going to put my little palette to the side, leave it in my travel kit. I think my big palette is a little bit more functional for here in the studio. And before you begin your practice, remember to just spray your watercolor paints, just to activate them with a bit of water, so that when you need the pigment, it is ready to roll. Right, I'm going to put my palette here. And if you want to know what these colors look like, I always have this little round color swatch lying here on my table, and I position it exactly the way that I've placed the pigment in my palette, so then you can basically get an idea of what color I am working with. Let me put it like that. There we go. Alrighty then. So if we just give our sort of reference material a quick look here, I want us to focus on specific areas of practice. Let's look at this round table. We have a lot of blues and greens, yellows, some natural colors, maybe some apricot or peachy tones, pinks and violets. It's almost like the entire rainbow, right? Alrighty then, so let's then prepare pigment like that. I'm going to use a smaller brush. Let's start with a nice light blue. I've got here cerulean blue. It's a beautiful sky blue. And I'm just going to, let's drop a little bit of water in each of these wells, so that we don't waste too much time. Right. Let's get some blue going, a soft blue. And we're sort of making tea mixtures. I'm going to add a little bit of phthalo blue to that just to get it going. That cerulean blue of mine is more student grade blue. It's very soft and it almost sometimes feels like it's hard to get the pigment out. This is a beautiful warm pink. Let's add it to this well. Right. Let's get some purple going. This is my dark sizzling purple. Yes. Dark sizzling is always giving because it's such a potent pigment. Let's get into some yellow ochre, I think. Let's do some yellow ochre in this natural well. And I'm going to add maybe a little bit of Van Dyke brown. So we have a brownish, warmish, neutral, natural color. I think I'm going to go for my Nico Azo yellow, which is nice and intense. Add some water to that. And for the green, I'm going to go for this beautiful olive green. So really just mix yourself a whole rainbow of color that you want to play with. I think I'm going to drop in some turquoise. Now there is a little bit of gouache in that well, but that's okay. I feel that pink needs a bit of a punch. Let's add a bit of this magenta to it. What else do we need? Let's look at our page. Blues, turquoises, purples, pinks. Maybe a little bit of orange, right? So I'm going to use this pyrrole orange. Beautiful color. Such a happy color. Okay. So it doesn't really matter what colors you mix. The whole idea now is let's practice. So get your brush ready. Let me just get my kitchen towel. With clean water, I want you to just focus on one of these circles. And I want you to pre-wet it and give yourself the experience of just wetting your page with clean water. If you need to, you can turn your head slightly to the side like I do, just to see the gloss of the water. Now, if you're using a 300-gram watercolor paper, you will know that you will experience that it takes a minute for the paper to open up to the water and to soften up and to be ready to receive. So gently massage it in. Always give yourself the practice of going neatly around your perimeters, because it's a practice that we use in our watercolor. Every time we paint, you want to maybe be in a special zone in your painting and you don't want to paint outside the lines. So I'm just gently massaging the water. It mustn't look like super glossy before you drop in the water. You just want to give it a minute or so just to soak in. And you want to see a uniform glow, a uniform shine on your surface. I'm going to turn my page for you a little bit and hopefully you'll be able to see the gloss of the water. Right, so that looks beautiful. So let's begin with some of these neutral tones. I'm just picking it up and we're just going to drop it in some areas. Now remember, because you've pre-wetted your page and the color mixtures that I've made on the in the palette is also very soft. It's more like tea mixtures. Your color is going to look very soft and pastel-y, but that's what we're practicing now, right? Let's drop in some blue in between. And every time I rinse out my brush, I just drag off the excess water from my brush so that I don't have too much water on my brush, but more just pigment. And then you sort of just play around your circle and you sort of move into zones where there's no paint yet. And it's going to continue to flow into each other. And when you notice that you are creating a little bit of a dam of water, you can just use a dry brush to just pick up some of that water. I'm gonna drop in a little bit of orange here and there, not too much. Okay, what haven't I put down? Let's put in a little bit of yellow. You can see the yellow tends to want to push other colors away a little bit. That's something in watercolor to take note of. And when you know these things, it can really help. Sometimes in a painting, you want to bring in some yellow in a darker area, and then you know the yellow can push some of the darker colors away. It can sometimes be in your favor. That's gorgeous. Here you can see I went outside the line, but it's not the end of the world. Don't chastise yourself. This is just an exercise, right? Now, basically, we've created the stone table in some watercolor. Let's play with this color mixture. So there's a lot of lemon yellow, turquoise, and green in this area. And we also want to sort of practice like the look of magic flowing out of the magic wand. Okay? So I'm going to use my clean water. Let's try this circle here. And the same exercise again. Let's use clean water to just pre-wet the page. This is how we're going to paint on the paper when we get into our actual reference material. we're going to have a wet into wet background, and we want to practice to direct the flow of our paint so that we can create the magic that we see on the paper. I find it difficult to get the word paint out of my mouth today. Right, let's practice again. Dragging the brush around the circumference of our paper in a neat way. I did go outside the line there a little bit, as I said, neat. So then you can always just use your kitchen towel just to pick up that edge of water that you maybe have spilled on the side. Right. Beautiful. Right, so let's look again at this little bit here. So there is this beautiful movement. I think we're going to need a little bit of a darker blue. So I'm going to add some indigo to my blue. Here we go. Make it a bit darker. And I also want to add quite a little bit of this lemon yellow to my yellow. Wow, just let's lemon this up a bit. I don't want to waste all that pigment. Here we go, there's a little bit of a hair there. Beautiful. And this turquoise needs to also be ready to roll. Right. Wipe off. Now I'm going to use this darker indigo-ish blue on the perimeter, pretending that this is the background of our painting. And then let's look at our reference material. Let's play with the turquoise. Now pretend the wand lies like that, so let's drop in this beautiful turquoise and just direct it into that flow a little bit. And now let's pick up this gorgeous yellow and let's go like that. Nice. I love it. Some concentrated turquoise here. And then we just leave it alone. Have you noticed when I say leave it alone, I tend to fiddle with it more? It's sometimes hard for me to let go because I want to manipulate the paint a little bit longer and get a little bit more out of it, but you know, it's okay. Look how beautiful these colors have settled into this beautiful sphere, and how that bled into each other, giving us very soft, diffused kind of vibes. That's gorgeous. Okay, let's try another one. Here's lots of purples, indigos, and blues. Let's try that. Again, clean water. Let's wet our page or the zone that we're going to paint in. So this is ways that you can prepare yourself to do a bigger painting. So if you don't want to figure out strategy in your painting on the fly as you go through the painting, then it's, a good practice to just analyze your reference material that you want to get into, especially if you see interesting sort of challenges in your painting. And there's a number of interesting layering techniques that I will be sharing with you guys for this painting as we go. So this is going to be a lot of fun. But it's nice to just get into the basics. What will it take in watercolor to create that magical flow in a seamless kind of way? And in a way, we're going to have to trust the watercolor to sort of do what we want it to do. Right, let's drop in some purple. This is beautiful core watercolor pigment. It is a professional pigment, and they have a beautiful synthetic binder that is giving you this flow of color. So not all watercolors are created equal. If you have a student grade kind of pigment, you might find that your color doesn't flow like mine does. So instead of buying expensive watercolor, if you are on a bit of a budget but you really want to experience this flow of color, then you can just invest in a bottle of Oxgyle from the art supply store and add a little drop of Oxgyle to your mixture. Very little is needed, so a bottle is going to last you a lifetime, and that should improve the fluidity of your paint like this to flow and granulate a little bit. I'm just going straight into my pigment. I just want some strength of color because the region where this color is happening is very dark on the paper, and we have a lot of water here. Just playing with my indigo and my dark Cezanne violet. I'm going straight into the well here to just pick up that pigment. I'm not diluting it with much water. And just play with it a little bit. Let's pick up some magenta. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? I'm going to add some phthalo as well, because I know phthalo and magenta, when they mix, it creates the most beautiful purple. I'm going to use this hot pink of mine. Oh, that's not the hot pink. That's a little bit more of an orange. Well, let's add it and see what happens. It's a bit of a warmer color. Not the right one. There's the right one. Now you can see there's a little dam of color here. So take your tissue, wipe it off. Now my brush is dry, and you will see that the brush is going to pick up the water. Just wipe it off on your kitchen towel. I think that is good enough. I'm gonna go straight for some indigo pigment. It just doesn't want to give today. Come on, indigo. Why are you riding away? There we go. So this is a little bit more like honey because I'm digging straight out of my well here. But I really want that intensity there. But the more pigment that's on your brush and the less water you have, the more likely it is that your paint's just going to stay where you drop it. But because it's wet, it will soften. There might have been a little bit of an oil mark on my paper because it made an interesting bloom there. Nice. This little bit of paper is wet, not so wet anymore. That's why it's making a hard edge. So I'm just gonna move into it. Awesome. You can see the paper is buckling a little bit with all the water. There's a little bit of a hair I want to pick up. Let's see if my tweezer can pick it up. Yes, success. Thank you, tweezer. Otherwise, I'm just going to push that around and around, and it will stay stuck to the paint. Okay, we're going to leave that alone. Look how quickly my water dirties. This is very important to notice because this is the rinsing jar, and if you just use one jar of water, that is how dirty your water is going to be. So when you pick up fresh pigment with dirty water, it's going to dull your colors down. So always have two jars. This is my clean jar of water and my rinsing off jar, so that I can see what's going on with my water source, because this is watercolor, right? So you need clean water for nice, vibrant colors. Right. So basically, I want you just to give yourself a little bit of a practice with bringing some colors into a wash, into a wet onto wet background, and just see what these colors will do when they interact with each other, and just play. This is a play practice zone. You can repeat as much or as many of this as you want. Maybe even try to overlap some of them. But if you're going to overlap them, make sure that each circle is completely bone dry before you start playing in the next circle, so that when they overlap, you can maybe see the transparency of your color and what happens with those colors when they layer on top of each other. So that is a good exercise to get into before we get into the painting, because the painting is going to require a little bit of skill as far as some of these techniques is concerned. So in our next episode, I'm going to start to break in this little painting of ours, and we're going to use some of these techniques. So I'll be showing you how to paint some details in the background. Let me try and move this tissue just like that so that you can see what I'm seeing. There are a number of little plants or sort of indications that there's plants in the background. And the strategy that I have going forward is to paint those little plant details first, let it dry, and then come over with this intense wash. Because the background in general is much darker in value than the actual table where the wand is lying. We will also be adding maybe a little bit of masking fluid, especially to the front bit of the wand, just to protect it in case the wash runs into it or contaminates that area. And that is the lightest area in the entire painting. So we definitely want to be able to save that brilliant white of the paper there. So that's basically how I'm going to approach this painting. My suggestion is always pay attention to the details, but when you start painting, the details comes last. It is really more the general washes and establishing a bit of a value in your painting that is more important in the beginning. And as you build up your layers, you will become more and more detailed going forward. So don't stress too much about too much detail in the beginning, but do strategize about how you're going to approach it and how you're going to layer your colors in order to achieve the depth that you need and also to retain the highlight that you need. This is exciting painting for my artistic wand tier on Patreon. I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye bye for now.